this is the HMIS training for the PATH Street Outreach Work Group. Before we get in to the actual training of it, a couple things that we want to cover on your screen is the announcement. We will be converting or updating the system to the latest version of ClientTrack, version 15. That is going to occur this upcoming Monday. So Monday morning when everybody comes in, the system will be on the new system. The training is all geared toward the new system, so you're going to see demos and information about what changes to expect. Now, this changes. There's not going to be any new data elements or new questions or new processes. The change is pretty much from a visual standpoint. Pretty much all the changes you're going to see are to like menu, navigation. ClientTrack kind of made the system a little more 3D. And hopefully this training and the documentation we've provided can help you guys transition to those new, the new visual aesthetics of the system. We are going to be covering, we've created some documentation for everybody. We sent out some yesterday for yesterday's training, which is a navigation and reference guide, which we're going to use again today. And we have completed the PATH Street Outreach Workgroup Training Guide reference, which we will send out after the training as well. And also we have our training site, which has been available for the last week or two. We recommend if you haven't been in there, go ahead, click in there. It should be almost a copy of production. It's a couple weeks behind, but you should be able to use your same username and password, get in the system, check it out, and play with it to get used to it before moving to, before it's converted on Monday. Okay, now we're going to get into the training. As I said, there's going to be a couple documents that we're going to kind of loosely follow along. The navigation and menu reference is the first. We're going to talk about some of the changes in navigation throughout the system, the menus. Then we'll jump into kind of walking through the main data collection steps for your programs. If you have any questions during the training, there is a chat box as well as a Q&A utility that you can go ahead and answer it. We'll stop once we hit kind of a section break, and we'll go ahead and ask those questions, and David's going to be manning that, and we'll kind of see where that goes. This training's probably going to last about an hour, hour and 15 minutes, depending on questions and what people ask to see, but we'll see if we can kind of power through the training so we're not here till 2. Okay, navigation, menu, and reference. Like I said before, this is basically going to show, this is kind of like the guide that introduced, introduction to version 15 of the ClientTrack system. And it kind of shows, basic login, which is the same, how to pick some of your information when you're going in, as well as a couple concepts called workspaces and the new menu. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go straight to the system and kind of walk you through that from a demo side. This is what the system looks like when you log in. It's going to be the same URL. It's got your username and password. None of that information will change. But you can tell it's a new system. They kind of put this blue line here, I guess can help everyone see that it is a new system. The work group, you're still going to be prompted for your work group, your organization, and a location. The work group is the actual kind of defines the functions and the type of data you're going to be collecting. This is going to be for PATH and outreach. It's important that you pick that when you're working on any of your PATH or your street outreach programs. Your organization, most people just have one. If you have multiple ones, you can work in each one. And then location, that's something that ClientTrack brings up, but we don't use for data collection purposes, at least not the one that you assign to yourself when you log in. So you can just leave it as the default, and it's not going to affect anything. All right, once you log in, it always kind of opens up into a pop-out screen. And as you can see here, here is the new look. If anybody hasn't seen it before in screenshots or been in the training system, this is the new look of the system. As you can see, it's been upgraded, a little more 3D. Hopefully it's easier to read. Takes a little while to get used to it, but now that I've been working on it a couple weeks, it actually, it's easier on the eyes, like the text is a lot bigger. So the two areas that we want to talk about in terms of navigation, which is the main part of things that have changed, are the actual work group, or workspaces is what we call them. In the old system, or the current system, they had the tabs at the top of the screen, where you come in and you have your Clients tab, your Home tab, Providers, Support. They've actually changed that to more of a, and I'll show you, it's more of a 3D carousel. So when you log in, you're initially going to be placed on the Clients tab, like usual, and that isn't going to change. But if you want to work into a different area, say you want to go to Provider tab or your Home tab, what you do is you click on this item here, and it will bring up this carousel. And within this carousel is basically all the old tabs that you had in the previous system. Nothing has changed there. The tabs are all the same and work exactly, have the same bit of information that you had in the past. The Clients tab is for client data. The Home tab is more of like a user tab where it has your, client management and report features. So to move to a new workspace or new tab, all you have to do is click on it. And as you can see, the system will load and put you on the dashboard on that tab. So hopefully that's fairly straightforward, not too big of a change. So that's how you're going to cycle through areas within the system. Now, the menu, we're going to go ahead and show this. Before, the menu was a little bit different. As you can see here, the concepts are still the same. Once you're in a tab area, and when you have the menu open, it closes, so you can hover over it to see, oh yeah, I'm in Home. It still has the same concept of where you click on the workspace, and then you have folders within that workspace that provide your actual functions and actions. All these folders and all the actions within those folders are exactly the same as well. So before where your PATH annual report was or your COC APR was, it's going to be pretty much in the same position that it was before. Now, one area where they did change it is they made it a hover menu. So instead of having all of the items there for you, any item that has one of these arrows here, that means it has a sub-menu underneath of it. So if you hover on that, it will give you a whole list of other options from which you can choose. It kind of makes the folder, it's kind of like the folders, within your operating system. So if you're looking for your PATH APR, it's still under Case Management, HUD HMIS Reports, and when you hover over it, you can go through here and select, which actual report you want. Same thing with the Case Manager or the Client Program Reporting, which has a lot of the main reporting in the system. You can find those specific reports under these subfolders, and then you just click the item you want and, say I wanted Client Program Data Quality, it'll take you directly there. So that's probably this menu change from a hover is probably one of the, the visual navigation changes in the new system. Now, by default, what they have actually done is to kind of give you full screen when you're entering or when you're entering or reviewing data. After you have picked a, let's say I want to go to Client Program Data, the menu will automatically close, and it kind of like opens up the full screen for you. Some people like that, some people may not. But if it does close on you, you'll know that it's still here, and you can click on this option up here, Show a Menu, to actually reopen it up. So even if you click Clients, and we're going to go to the next tab, as you see here, it is closed, but you can reopen it, and then you get your normal, options within your menu. Now, for those that like it open all the time, there is like this pin option up here, where if you click on it, it will always show the menu. So even if you click on a menu option, it'll resize this, main area to the small, like the 3/4 of the screen, and leave the menu on all the time. So, and it will save that setting. So if you say, I want to show it all the time, when you set it, even the next time you log in, it'll remember that setting. So you can play with that setting to, determine, whether you want the menu or not going forward. Now there is one new thing or new option that ClientTrack has put into the system that we're actually, I'm going to go back to the Home tab to kind of show it. Because the Home tab, we're going to cover most of the stuff within the Clients tab, which is a lot of the data collection. The Home tab is where there's things like HMIS account. It's where your user task, or you can view your caseload. There's also the System Documents area. This is where you can go in and download any of the system documents that we have uploaded there. We try to keep that pretty up to date. And we should have the new version 15 documentation up in the system very shortly. So that's a good spot to go. And you can also filter by, intake templates if you're looking for data templates, training materials. This is also where you have agreements and forms, such as like the client consent form, system agreement, that sort of thing. Case manager reports, that is all the reports in the system as we kind of showed, any kind of report that you need to run. Most of the ones that are kind of like APRs and annual reports you are going to find in the HUD HMIS report section. Then there is client management. Now this is a kind of a nice little place where it has a bunch of client management tools, and we just want to kind of show a couple of these during the training because we think they're pretty good tools to use, because we've got active enrollments, because a lot of people ask, how do I see the clients that are in my current programs, and they don't want to take the time or don't want to run a report, they just want something quick. You can use these active enrollments or enrollment cases to come in, and we're going to go ahead and select permanent supportive housing. And as soon as you select the program, it's going to show you all the clients that are currently enrolled in your program. Now, if you do active cases, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's looking at households. Case is what ClientTrack refers to as a household being served together. Now, there's a menu favorite option that ClientTrack has added. So any screen or report you go to, up the top here, there will be a little star. If you see a star there, that means it can be created as a favorite. So if you click on that star, it basically, you can, rename it. Say, I just want to say, active households, something like that. And you hit save. At this point, this gets added up here new, and this will be almost like a shortcut or a favorite, kind of like, with your internet, that if you click this option, it'll always take you back to that page. You can do the same thing with, I've got active households. Let me add active enrollments. That's actually named pretty well. But I'm going to put them in a container. Let's just call it active lists. Here, and save. So as you can see here, and I'm actually going to go back to this households here, and I'm going to click to modify it and say, hey, I want it to be in the active list folder. Let's see if that works. There, that worked. So you can actually not only put items on your list, but you can create your own subfolder directory, and I've done it out a couple, so you can get as complicated or as simple as you want here. So anytime you're in the home page or home tab of your account, and these are specific to just your user account, you can just click on here and go directly to active enrollments or active or active households without having to remember or navigate through the system. Same thing if you run a report all the time and you're like, oh, here's my path annual report, let me go ahead and add that as a favorite as well, so you can get to it quick and easy. And we're going to switch over to clients, and as we can see, there's no favorites here because each tab has its own favorites. So let's say I want to do client profile. Nice and easy. And then to edit or remove it, you just right-click it and you can remove it. So that's another really nice feature to help with the navigation within the system. Okay, that pretty much covers, you know, the basic navigation and menu changes that were done in the system, and that's detailed with screenshots and everything in our navigation document. So I don't know if there's any questions or we have anything, anybody have any questions or want to see anything related to that before we move into the Path Street Outreach data collection part.
Right, and I don't have any questions in the chat or the Q&A. And remember, folks, that you can either scroll near the top or to the right-hand side of your screen to pull up those chat and Q&A functions. Or you can use the raise hand feature, and we can see what we can do to unmute you if you want to answer a question live.
Cool. Cool, thanks, Dave.
Yep.
All right. Path Street Outreach Programs. This is a guide that we created that basically goes through all the major steps of entering clients into the system. You know, we kind of go through client collection, enrollments, a lot of the program management features like edit enrollments, review assessments, as well as giving some information on, you know, how to find and locate assessments, project services, and such. So this is kind of a nice comprehensive guide to kind of go through, to have by your side to take a look. And it's all been updated with screenshots and information about the new system. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically go back into the system. And we're going to kind of start at the first part, which is the Find Add Client. This is kind of like the starting point of data collection in the system, and kind of talk about entering new clients, finding existing clients, and kind of the difference between, you know, what we've labeled local clients versus global clients. So, okay, we are on our Clients tab, which is where we need to be for any data collection. Now at the starting point, we have one main function that kind of kicks off everything, and that is our Find Add Client. And it's right here up on the top, and it's always there for, you know, up there in our favorites. And this is kind of a tool that allows you to search for existing clients and select them and load them in your Client tab, or create new clients to be entered in the system so that you can, you know, do your data collection thing with them. So the first thing you want to do before creating a new client is we have a whole bunch of fields that you can use for a search. The more information you put in, the more precise the search will be. And when you hit search, the system will perform a search to see if there's any results. If there aren't any results, that means, hey, that client isn't already in the system. You can be comfortable to go ahead and enter them in as fresh. Now, before I do the new client, I do want to talk about some of the, you know, what would happen if you search a client. And I'm going to do something open so it gets a lot of results back. Now, when you do get results, it provides a fair amount of information within the grid. So hopefully you'll be able to identify if, oh yeah, that's the client I'm looking for and I want to work with, or not. Should help you with that decision. Now, one other part when you're looking at the results is owned by your organization. This kind of tells whether that client record, whether your organization has direct access to that client record or whether you, at this point in time, do not. If you don't, it'll come up and say no global client, and what that basically means is that client was entered by another organization, but the client agreed to share their data throughout the system. So it is available for you to use, and I'll kind of walk you through the steps of how to do that global client. Because if it is a local client, there's basically nothing you need to do from a creation standpoint. You click on that client record, and what the system will do is load that client in the dashboard, and basically all the data collection options are open. So you can look at their client profile, you can go into enrollments and enroll them. It basically gives you free reign to do what you need to do, and we always recommend choosing an existing client over creating a new one to help with deduplication. Now, if it is a global client, we still would like you to select this client so that you can use it going forward. Same kind of principles with, trying to duplicate the client. Once again, you select them, and it will load you on the dashboard. But at this point, they're a global client. Your organization doesn't have full access to them yet. A lot of these options are all grayed out. We've added here at the top of the dashboard, and this is for all clients, a client identification tab. And this, along with that field that we showed in the search, it will also show you whether the client is, yes, owned by your organization, the record's owned by your organization is good to go, or no. If it's no, we have actually, this little blue ball here basically denotes actions. So anytime you click on a blue ball, it'll give you choices or functions that you can run. We've actually tried to create it, fairly easier to access than before. So if you have a global client that you want to use, basically you load him and then you click this Review Import Client Global Record. At this point, what it does is it basically takes you to this screen where you can either import the client or you can import the entire household, and it kind of gives you information about that client. Once you do that, I'm not going to actually do that right now. It'll unlock all of these options. Actually, I will, because I can undo it. The client import, what it basically does is it's kind of recording that you're importing it, so there's not a lot of data that you need to enter. All you basically need to do is hit import down at the bottom, and it'll walk you through the process. It's all under the hood. It'll take care of it. And then you'll be replaced on the client dashboard, and as you can see, all of this information is now open and you're good to go. And from that point on, that record is owned by your organization, so the system sees it as your client, so it'll be treated the same as if you would have created it. So that's kind of like the little summary of the difference between local and global clients, because you always want to try to reuse those clients that you find in the results. However, when you do a search and there are no records found, down at the bottom here of the screen, we actually have two options that allow you to enter in the client's brand new. And both options are very similar depending on your need. There's Create New Client, which basically walks you through the process of creating a single client. Then there is Create New Household, which is basically a workflow that once you create the first client, it just prompts you to continue adding household members. So you kind of control how much data you want to enter at that point. We're going to go ahead and say Create New Household to show you those extra fields, because the first step that you're going to do in Create New Client and Household is pretty much the same. It's where you're going to create the first client in the household, who's also going to be automatically denoted as the quote-unquote head of household. And what this brings up is our client profile, which collects a lot of demographic and universal information about a client. And as you can see throughout the screens, there will be certain fields that have this red star. Anything that has a red star basically means it's required to be collected. So you have to collect it before you can move on to the next step. And we're going to go through here and collect information. We have Social Security number, and then we've got date of birth. That's probably 2. Let's go there. Now, as you can see, the only ones that are required are the first and last name. None of the other information is required, and that's when you initially create the client. And that's a lot for street outreach and PATH programs that might, you know, that might contact a client, might not get as much of the information, so it allows you to build that client profile slowly over time. Because we're going to leave a couple of them empty. And the system does, because there's certain data elements, the universal ones like ethnicity, race, gender, disabling condition, veteran status that are required before enrollment into a program. And the system, and we'll show during enrollment, will be smart enough to catch those and ask you to fill in anything that might be missing at that time. Once you filled it in, you basically hit next. And the second page is a client contact information that's completely optional. And once you have filled that in, you're going to hit finish. And what the system does at that point, usually, and it didn't actually prompt that time, I guess because I put in a Social Security number, is it will also check to see if there's any clients that match the client you entered. So if you get a list up there, check it out to make sure that the client, you didn't miss them in the search or accidentally overlook anybody. If there aren't any duplicates, you can go ahead and hit finish again, and the system will go ahead and create a new client. Just kind of a little warning check for you anytime you create a new client. Now, if you're doing a new client, that's the end of it. You know, to create a new client, you're put right back on the dashboard. But since we're doing a household here, what it does is it kind of gives you an interactive prompt of, you know, do you want to create a new household member? I'm going to go ahead and hit select yes. And the standard method basically means you can do the same way we created the first client. It'll take you through the full profile, and when you hit finish, it'll prompt again, do you want to create a new person? And it'll basically keep doing that until you say, no, I'm done and I'm out of the process. Or you can use this quick entry method, which is it's kind of our multi-screen, and we're going to actually use that here. It's a quick household method. I'm going to actually open up the screen here. That allows multiple household members to be edited or entered in at the same time. Some people like going through the profiles, but a lot of people like using this option, including myself. We are going to go ahead and enter in a new client. And as you can see here, each row is a client. Existing clients will automatically be shown in that household. You can add as many household members as need be, you know, right within this step. So this is why that if you choose this method, this is the last step in the process, because you can do it as many times as you want. If you're only adding one, then you only need to add in the one row. Then it pretty much has the profile information where you can go and fill out their profile data. Actually, I want to make that child. And then relationship to household, head of household, self, that's the head of household, that's always self-assigned to the first person placed into a household. Even if it is a single client, they're also placed in their own household as head of household. Any additional people that are added need to be identified of, what is their relationship to that head of household. So I'm going to put son. And when you're done, I'm just going to add the one household member here. You can go ahead and hit save and close actually. And if there are any messages that come up, since each row is its own record, they'll be at the end of each row, so you can highlight it. And as you can see here, this one is actually the duplicate search that I talked about at the end of the client profile. This also occurs in the household, this household screen. And I'm looking at it, and it's for Paula Jones. That's a different person because this is a male. If it is, you want to continue creating that person, you just hit save again. Again, it's just a check. And once that's done, that client and any household members that you've created are now in the system. Now, once you've created a new client, to make things a little bit easier, we've kind of prompted this shortcut or navigation screen. So it basically prompts you to where you want to go. You can perform a new client search, load their profile, or start a new enrollment. I think a lot of people, when they enter clients, they want to go straight to enrollment, so that's actually what we are going to do. One thing I do want to mention is I know we did the navigator straight down to it. You can also get to the project enrollments, and I'll probably show this in subsequent enrollment things that we show, but you can go directly to project enrollments, and there's an option within that screen to start a new enrollment. So it'll basically take you to this same screen. This starts the enrollment process. Now, I don't know if there are any questions on any of the client entry stuff that we just did. I don't think I see anything in the chat. Okay, great. This is where, from an enrollment standpoint, this is where you actually record, the client receiving services within your program. Entering the client and putting them in a household is the first step. The second step is making sure that they're entered into an enrollment. Now, when you get to this step, the system is going to list all of the different, outreach and or PATH programs that you have available to place these clients into. What I'm going to do is, depending on whether your program is PATH funded or whether it's just like a ESG or COC or other funded street outreach, the enrollments are slightly different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little bit of the difference between the two. So we're going to start with a street outreach program, and this is just a non-PATH street outreach program. As soon as you select the project, the system is going to automatically show you all the households or all the clients that are in this client-specific household. And it's kind of like the combination screen to allow you to basically enroll multiple people at the same time. To enroll a person, you just click on their grid, or you can use this, select all option, and they'll highlight blue. And then you'll just need to fill in the enrollment date and make sure the relation to head of household is correct. And for non-PATH funded outreach programs, the only other field that is required is date of engagement. And that can be left blank depending on, whether you actually had an engagement with the client or not. Couple points here is we also prompts for what county the client was served in. All service-based programs prompt that, helps us report on county numbers served. And with the enrollment date, it defaults to the current day. So a lot of times we're not doing data entry on that same day. So you can go ahead and make sure that if they enrolled or started receiving services on a different day, you can go ahead and change it directly within that screen. At this point in time, when you hit save, that is going to kick off the enrollment, and you're going to kind of go into, a full enrollment where it's going to do data validation. It's going to collect assessments, pretty much like any other program in the system. And we will cover that. But before we go into that, I want to show PATH. Because PATH has a little bit different data element requirements, as well as they have a little, a wrinkle in how we, and I guess it's not a wrinkle, it's a customization of what we've made for their PATH program to help with data collection in terms of contacts and full enrollments. So if you select a PATH program, the same thing comes up. All the people in the household will come up in the grid. Now, PATH is primarily, not even primarily, it is about serving a single client. So you should only have a single client in your household. And if you do have extra clients, you're probably going to only be enrolling the head of household into that. That's just how it's developed in the real world. But as you can see here, there are new clients, or there are new data elements that differ than the non-PATH funded street outreach. They still have the first contact date, and this is a little bit different than the street outreach, as this is actually the first date that they perform a contact with a client. They can go all the way back to there. Relationship to the head of household, which most times, since it's a single, will be self. They also have the ability to enter in an engagement date, depending on whether it occurred. And then they have this client enrolled in PATH. And this is a very important element because this determines how the system reacts in data collection. If they select no, along with also having to collect the reason they're not enrolled in the PATH, which could be for ineligible, or basically the other section is all other reasons, or if it's only a contact only. At that point, the system will allow you to create what we call a contact-only enrollment. And that basically doesn't require any further data collection in terms of assessments or required data. It basically allows them to create an enrollment record that allows you to collect contacts. Non-funded PATH outreach programs do not have this option at this time. However, if you select yes, that means that the client was eligible for your PATH services and is willing to accept your PATH services and is going to be fully enrolled into the program. If you do select yes, once you save the enrollment, the system will require what we call the full enrollment information data collection, which is, universal data elements, data sharing policy filled out, as well as it'll walk through all the assessments that need to be collected, like health barriers, HMIS data, that sort of thing. So, and we're going to walk through a little bit of that in the future. So what we've also done is we've created a PATH guide for our PATH program people to go into a lot more depth. I think we had a training about 3 or 4 weeks ago for them. We're going to be sending out an updated guide that goes into full depth with all these individual data elements and all the special rules around that contact-only enrollment when we send out the documentation for this training as well. Okay, what we're going to do is do a street outreach enrollment, and then what I'm going to do is come back and do a path enrollment as well. At this point in time, you're going to select 2 people to be enrolled, and then you just hit next. Then it goes into what we call the client data validation. It's going to make sure that each client enrolled has all the universal data elements collected, has a client consent, and then it's going to go into the individual assessments. Now at this point, if the client has all the universals collected, has a default domestic violence assessment, as well as a client consent already in the system, it will completely skip this. So this is more of something that mostly occurs on first-time enrollments. And as you can see with the domestic violence survivor, if you were to select yes, it actually has sub-questions that pop up to collect extra information about that client's DV information. We're going to go ahead and click no. And this is the client consent form, or the electronic version that's entered into the system. Every client that is fully enrolled into the system is required to have an electronic data sharing policy entered for them, so we know what to do with their data sharing. Now, this only affects data outside of your organization. So if you enter data into the system, that data is viewable by you and your organization. You know, that's kind of where it comes owned by your organization. Those clients you create, you'll be able to see that. Data outside, you know, the data sharing basically affects how that data can be seen by other organizations. There's basically 3 options. Full data sharing basically means full data will be shared outside of the organization. That is a default. There is partial data sharing, which means you can come in and select, pick and choose which of these data elements can be shared outside of your organization. And then there's the third choice, which is no sharing, which basically means all the data collected by the client will stay with the organization that collects it. This basically mirrors our client consent form for release of information agreements that we have. It's actually in our system documents area. Anybody that you enter as full or partial data sharing does require to be accompanied by a signed client consent agreement on file. So that's something that you want to keep on file. For those that do not, you don't have a client consent form or they don't agree to it, you do need to enter no data sharing to get by this level. So we make sure that since they haven't given approval for data to be shared, we got to make sure it stays at your organization. So once you've entered that information, you basically hit save. And that kind of ends the pre-enrollment data validation, at least for the first person in the enrollment. And then we enter into the standard outreach assessments. The assessment date always defaults to the entry date, and this is kind of like a summary screen saying, hey, we're going to start these assessments. You can change the date if that's incorrect, but since it's entry, it should match up with the enrollment date, and that's the date we use to populate for the rest of the assessments. Now over here you can kind of see the workflow. Anytime we do like a complicated process like enrollments or exits or annual assessments, that sort of thing, the system kicks off a workflow process that basically walks you through multiple screens. It's a good way to indicate where you are in the process, how far you have to go, that sort of thing. And it does allow you to kind of jump back and forth. Anything that's green is done. The red are kind of like, hey, these are junction points, while anything that's locked out you still haven't completed. So the first assessment is the Universal or HMIS Data Assessment, where we ask the housing status. The client location always defaults to the COC the program is associated to. Service location and last zip you can enter, but as you can see there's no red star, so they are not required. Then we have the living situation, which basically asks for their prior residence in combination with previous homeless information. The approximate date homeless started, I'm going to say, oops, 16. And we do have a bunch of notes in here. Anytime you click on this little question mark after it, it tries to provide some notes, some guidance for how to fill out that question. Number of times the client has been on the streets in the past 3 years. I'm going to go ahead and enter 2 times. And then total number of months the client has been on the street in ES or in a safe haven. And as you can see here, you've got these options goes from 1 month individually all the way up to more than 12 months. And I'm just going to say this is the first month since that's what the date matches. The next area is health insurance. This allows you to select if you've entered anything but yes. You don't need to answer these. These will all default to no if you answer these, because these are all the different health insurance types that you can say a client has at this point in time. We're going to go ahead and say yes. So at this point you need to select at least one. At least one of them needs to be turned to yes. These are pretty standard. We get these from HUD. These are in the standard pick list. Now other public is kind of like our default, not on the list. So if you do select to that, it does allow you to enter in like an other insurance type that may not be on the list. Once you've completed that, you can go ahead and hit save, and then it's going to move you to the next section. This is actually a specific funding screen. Any ESG funded program active in the system during the enrollment needs to upload documentation. That's for any programs that have an active ESG grant or an active match ESG grant. I believe the DCD's done trainings on the requirements and everything based on that. But if you do come to the screen, it does mean that it is ESG funded. What they are requiring you to update is the homeless documentation checklist, and then you need to enter in one of, I believe, you need at least worker intake observations and third-party documentation, I believe, to be able to move forward. So depending on which ones you pick, the system will give you those options to upload. And to upload, you basically choose the file and browse to where it is in the system and click on it, and it'll automatically associate to that file, and it will store in the system. Let me see if I can get by. Okay, and I know that was probably more for a lot of ESG outreach programs than the PATH ones. The next screen that you're going to see is health barriers. It has our standard 7 health barriers. By default, they all are set up to no. So if the person doesn't have any health barriers, you can go ahead and hit save and move along. However, if they do have health barriers, you can select that to yes for whichever ones they may have, and then it will open up some additional questions about whether they're receiving services, whether their condition is indefinite, and whether you have documentation on file. And this condition is indefinite is the one that talks about they're going to have severe impairment, that long-lasting impairment, and is used for a lot of the severe reporting within the system. It does ask for DV again one more time. The first one was related more to the data sharing, like a default. This is actually associated to your enrollment. So you answer that as well. Then there is what we call financial assessment. This is where you collect any income or benefits that the client may have at the time of entry. If you answer, no or don't know to either of these, that's all you need to answer and you're done. However, if you do answer yes to either of them, it will open up grids for all the incomes we have listed, as well as the non-cash benefits. To enter one, you basically click on it, make sure it's highlighted and checked. For income, it does require an amount to be entered. So I'm going to say this person has $300 a month, and we're just going to say this person also has food stamps. You can enter an amount if you want for the non-cash benefits, but they are not required. Once you're finished there, you can go ahead and hit save. And that pretty much goes through the standard outreach assessments. It's the universal, the health barriers, on entry, domestic violence, that won't be there at exit, and then your financial. Now the last screen that always comes up during enrollments are contacts. Contacts are individual times that you meet with your client. And we're actually going to talk about this once we get through the enrollment section, because they're very important in terms of reporting for street outreach and especially PATH programs. So it basically gives you an opportunity to collect a contact for the client. And most of the time, once you do an enrollment, you've probably made that contact on that day to agree to enroll him. So that's why we prompted it, to make it easier to get that contact in the system along with the enrollment. I am going to backdate this to 9/25, which was the actual date of enrollment, and going to hit save. Now at this point in time, it's not required. This is more of a, hey, do you want to collect a contact? If you don't want to collect it, or it didn't happen at that point in time, you can always just hit the no contact occurred, and that'll finish up that process and move you on to the next step. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. So now what we're going to do is, that's the first person. So for most PATH programs, it's going to be a single person. You're going to be done at that point for your full enrollment. Now for street outreach, it will basically kick around to the second client. And it's going to walk you through basically an exact same screens and same steps, because each client needs a DV assessment as well as a data sharing policy in the system. Now, where some of the data may change is assessments are not only based on the type of program and the funding of the program, but the type of client. So if you're a head of household or an adult, you will definitely collect more data than if you're just a non-head of household child. So as you can see here, all we have is the universal as well as health barriers for the actual child. And here, all we really need to collect is the health insurance. And we're going to go ahead and enter in the same ones as the head of household. And hit save. And we're going to move to the child here, and we're not going to say he has any health issues. And that's it. Once you get to the bottom of all the data collection, and as you can see here, you can kind of open up and take a look at any of the workflow options. It's very flexible in what it allows you to see. Once you have finished the workflow, what we've done is left in this message that says you're done, everything's completed, as kind of a nice little message to let you know that you are, you've reached the end. Once you hit finish, it will close up, and you'll know that both clients have been enrolled into the program. What I'm going to actually do now, that's street outreach. Pretty much any client that you serve and you recorded an enrollment needs to go through that full enrollment with all the assessments collected, and then it'll allow you to start collecting services and contacts on that enrollment. I'm actually going to quickly do a PATH client, because I want to show you the differences between just regular street outreach and PATH funded. So I'm going to go ahead and start. I just created a new client, and now I'm going to start in a new enrollment. And this, I'm going to actually choose PATH. And as you can see here, we do support multiple PATH programs, street outreach or supportive services. They can be in the system, so that you can choose which client to, which program to enroll them in initially. They both will work exactly the same. What we're going to do is we're going to start with what we call for our PATH folks a contact-only enrollment. And that's basically when, you're not sure about their status, their eligibility, we just want to collect contacts. You enter in their first contact date. We're going to go ahead and hit no. And at this point in time, when we hit save, instead of going through all the enrollment stuff that we saw, it's going to skip all that. And you are going to be put directly on the contact screen to allow you to collect contact for that specific client. And as you can see here, for our PATH programs, we actually have a PATH enrollment status. Now, if it's just any other program that you see, this is just going to be NA. This is only for PATH programs. At this point in time, it's just a contact-only enrollment. So, there's no assessments required. You can't enter any services in terms of like enrolled services. However, you can enter in contacts. And we're actually going to go over contacts for everybody in the next section, since they work pretty much the same. Now, at this point in time, if you were going to, when you first enter a PATH program, you can select yes at the beginning, and they'll automatically be enrolled into the full program. It'll work exactly like we showed before with the outreach. You'll go through the process of collecting all the data, collecting the assessments, and then you'll be ready to enter in, PATH services and PATH referrals. Now, what we have here is we have a complete PATH enrollment option, because there could be, because it's not just, hey, they're going to be a contact, or hey, they're going to be a full enrollment. A lot of times when you enter them as a contact only, as you contact them and work with them, many times they are going to get to the point where they are eligible and they want to accept full PATH services. What you can do is go into the system, and there's these action buttons. You can actually select on complete PATH enrollment. And this is the only option in the system that allow you to actually change this from yes to no. because like I said before, this element here kind of controls what kind of data collection you need to do. Now, if you do select yes, the one thing that you need to enter is the date of the past enrollment, because this is the first contact date. This is the date that they actually enrolled into the program. So then you enter that, and then when you hit confirm, the whole program record then gets upgraded to the quote-unquote, full enrollment, and then it's going to go through all the same data elements, that we went through with the regular street outreach. I'm not going to cover all those because we just saw those with the regular street outreach, but it's the exact same process as before. One thing to note with the workflows is they do have a pause and a cancel option here. So if you're in the middle of one and you want to come back to it, you can hit pause, and I'll actually it basically allows you to restart it when you're ready, if you get interrupted, because what you can do is if you go back to home, and we're going to open up the menu, under PA HMIS account, there's actually paused operations. Keep the menu open there. Paused operations under your account, and it will show basically the latest workflow that you started, which was the Luke Wilson, and you can delete it or resume it. And if you hit resume, it'll pop you back in exactly where I was at the last spot. You can also cancel it, and that basically means I'm deleting it. I'm not going to bring it up again. So be careful about the delete because the system does save data on each screen. So don't think if you cancel a workflow, it undoes everything before. It just, if you cancel it, basically that means that process is going to stop wherever you manually stopped it. Okay, I think that covers the enrollments for both street outreach and PATH. I don't know if there's any questions or anything like that.
No, I haven't had any questions come in. In the chat or the Q&A?
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and keep going. The next thing that I want to talk about is the pre-enrollment or the contacts. And that's something that is very specific to this specific work group within the PATH Street Outreach work group. When you load the client and on the menu, you'll actually see this pre-enrollment contacts area. If you click on that, this is where it's going to show all your pre-enrollment, pre-enrollment contacts. For street outreach programs, non-PATH funded, this is where you want to enter in all of your contacts. And I know they're labeled as pre-enrollment because that's kind of how it started out, but they're pretty much for all, pre-enrollment contacts all the way through exit. And we give you some prompts during the enrollment to get at least that first contact in, but any additional contact that you have with the client, which can be a 1-minute greeting with them or a 30-minute meeting or an assessment, it's basically any time that you actually visit and have an interaction with the client, you're going to come into this screen, and there's up here, there's Add New Contact. You basically click on this button, and that's why we kind of went through enrollments first. Before you can enter in a contact into the system, you do need to have an enrollment. For street outreach, that does require the full enrollment to be done before you can enter contact. PATH does have that extra contact-only enrollment to be able to use as well. But you come in, you basically enter, I want to say, oh, I contacted him on 9/30/2016. You can choose between whether it's just a contact or an outreach. System-wise, reporting-wise, they're exactly the same. The difference can be used for your own reporting. Contact length, that is also not required, but that can be used. The other required is the contact location, and this is basically where the contact occurred, and there's the three main choices that have been there for a long time with contacts. Place not meant for habitation, and then the service settings, non-residential, and service settings, residential. So we're going to say this was in the office, and that's pretty much what is required. You can also add in additional, like any services, you can add in additional expenditure information, but it is not required. So you can continue to do that and basically add contacts all the way through for non-PATH street outreach programs all the way until you are exited from the program. Now our PATH people, which we've given specific guidance to, and we go more in depth within the actual PATH program guide that we're going to send out, is this is a place where you actually, these are pre-enrollment contacts that actually go from the first contact all the way through that date of PATH enrollment of when they're fully enrolled. You guys have something called post-enrollment contacts, which are actually done within the enrolled service area, and we'll actually show a little bit of that when we get to the service section. So that's contacts. I'm going to go ahead here and go down and see where we are in the guide. The clients, the client profile, the enrollments, pre-enrollment contacts. Let's actually go here. The program enrollment management. This is an area that has a whole bunch of options to help further manage the enrollment once they've been placed in the system. So if we come back here, now you can go back to the client dashboard, and you can see that here all your enrollments are going to be listed here in this enrollment area, as well as if you just click on project enrollments. This is basically going to show you the same look. It's just a big screen. It's going to show you all of your enrollments here as well. And this is also where the new project enrollment is. So if you don't use the navigation to get you there, you can always manually go to project enrollments and then new project enrollment, and then that will load the exact same, enter client into an enrollment or perform an enrollment that we showed before. So there's a couple different ways that you guys can get into that. And there's also, we've got the navigation. We're going to put this right here within the, the favorites of your client tab. So if you're ever confused or, hey, I want to go here or here, you can always click this. It'll always pop up and give you the option to go where you need to go, and that includes starting a new enrollment. We're actually going to view enrollments because I want to talk about some of those program actions available. When you click on this blue ball here, it basically provides a whole menu. It's kind of what we call like the action menu of a whole bunch of options that are specific to that program. So if you have multiple enrollments here, you'll have multiple blue balls to select in relation to what program you want to review or add data to. So what we're going to kind of go through here is we're going to go through each of these data elements or each of these actions and kind of give you a quick update on what they can be used for. And we're actually going to go back to Bobby Jones, and I'm going to go ahead and select him. Okay. And we are going to go off of the street outreach program. And both PATH and street outreach are pretty much the same. There are a couple functions that are a little bit different, and they are noted within the guide. Edit enrollment, this option can be used when you click on this. This is basically the option to use if you've made a mistake with the enrollment date. What it does is it takes you in here, or possibly with this new county, if you accidentally put them in the wrong county. What it'll do is it gives you this screen that you enter when you first enrolled them, and if you go, oh, I messed up, it should have been, it should have been 9/28. And you can use the calendar or manually do it. Then you hit confirm. That should have worked. I'll have to check on that. But what that should have done is basically updated your enrollment date. Next option, view case members. This actually takes you into, ClientTrack has something called cases, which are a group of household members serving in the same enrollment. And as you can kind of see here, let me go back to the dashboard. It always shows the number of case members that are here. So that's a nice, easy way to keep track of, do you have all the household members in the enrollment that need to be there. Say you have a household of 4, but you have an enrollment that says 3. If all of them should be in there, then there's probably, something happens, or they probably need to be added. So it's a good column to know about. And it basically, the view house case members is a detailed version of that count. So you can see each of the case members, what their enrollment date is, and then it actually allows you to, do individual options on that actual enrollment. Like if you just want to enroll, oh, Bobby, I want to delete that enrollment. He should have never been in it. Exit the enrollment, edit new enrollment. Pretty much the same options that we're showing you on the main menu, but they're for each individual case member. The next option, one option that we actually showed before that's on the list is that complete path enrollment. That is only for path. That allows the contact-only enrollment to be upgraded to the full enrollment. Add family member to this enrollment. This one is only for street outreach. We actually didn't add this to path since it is a single client-only program. We didn't feel the need to add in extra options that weren't going to be used. What this option does is allows you to add a household member to an existing enrollment. So in the example before, how I kind of said, oh, you have 4 people in the household, but the case member only says 3. Oh, we're missing one person. Maybe we forgot to put in a new child that was born, or someone that got added to the household after the original enrollment. This is how to do that. And it does need to be done that way, because anytime you use the new enrollment, it creates a brand new case and a new enrollment. So you definitely want to use this option when adding people. When doing that, it basically brings up the current household, and it allows you to basically, you can add the new people before this step, or you can do it right in this step, because you might say, oh, I forgot, the other brother, Simon. That actually should be male. And he's the other son. And I'm actually going to fill out some of these. We're going to say, let me fill out birth date. And you can, and this is the same household grid that comes up also within, when you go to household members that's used throughout the system. You hit save and continue. And after you've added, it's that duplicate message. After you've added the new member, or you just hit save and continue, the system basically is smart enough to go through and see any household member that's not a part of this for enrollment. And what it does, it actually prompts you one at a time. So if you were to add like 4 household members there, because, oh, I forgot to add the children in, after you add them, it would go through a loop each time and say, hey, child 1, do you want to enroll them? If you hit yes, it'll take you on the enrollment process. If you hit no, it'll skip to the next person. So this is a way to basically add in those missing people. And as you can see, I'm not going to finish this, but it does the same exact enrollment process as we've kind of shown before. Now, back to Bobby Jones assessments. There is review entry assessments. Anytime we do an enrollment, there's the exit one, the entry ones, and when we do the exit, which will be soon, there'll also be a review exit assessments. What this option allows you to do is, if you click on that review, it actually takes you directly to what we call our assessment summary screen. All right, there we go. And this shows all the assessments collected during the entry of this program for this client. Because we've got the universal, the health barriers, financial, DV, and a couple other optional ones that might not apply to PAD or to outreach. At this point in time, it shows whether they're there or not. If they aren't, you'll say no records found. It allows you to basically click on this edit option, and you can go ahead and click on that, and it will load whatever assessment it is. I clicked on financial, so it's going to go ahead and load the financial that was collected for Bobby Jones during the enrollment. Maybe I messed up and I was like, oh, it should have been 400. And go ahead and hit save. So that's a good option to use to find your assessments. Now, if one is missing, maybe you accidentally canceled the workflow or something happened, we've got this complete missing button. And what that'll do is when you click that button, it's got the logic for regular enrollments for your type of program, the client, the funding. It'll basically prompt you automatically for only the assessments that are required to be completed. So a lot of times if you've gone through a good enrollment and you click it, it'll blink at you and reload this screen. That means you're not missing any. Everything's good to go. At least they're all created, and if you need to edit any of them, you need to go into them individually. We also have update, perform annual assessment. I don't know if this relates as much to street outreach or even PATH programs, but normally when you enter a program and exit a program, you collect assessments. These also allow you to collect groups of assessments that occur while they're in the program. Because a lot of HUD programs require annual assessments to be performed on any client that's in a program longer than 12 months. So basically like the yearly annual assessments. If you select this option, it will basically allow you to collect updates. Because like say a client has a change to their health barriers or changes a lot of times to their income or employment, you don't want to go back and edit an existing one because that was kind of what the client had at that time. So you want to use this perform update annual assessment to actually collect a new assessment with the new information. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Okay. But it's pretty much the same process. When you go forward with the client, it's going to walk you through the workflow of all the assessments that you need to collect to enter in an update or an annual assessment. Exit enrollment. This is probably rolls in right well with the next topic we're going to do, which is talking about program exit. This is the option you use when you want to record your client has stopped receiving services. It's a discharge. I want to mark them as exiting my program in the system. And this is where you do that. By clicking exit, the first person you're on, it basically records or prompts you for our, I guess this is our set of like exit data elements. It wants the exit date, the last day service was provided to the client. It's looking for the destination, which is basically where the client is going to be after they leave your program. And this is actually a pretty important data element that's used in a lot of outcome reporting. reason for leaving, that can be entered in. And when we enroll a client into a program, they automatically get assigned to whoever the user is caseload, or assigned as a case manager. When you exit it, we also give that opportunity to close out that case assignment. So if you check that box, when you hit save, they'll also have their case manager record closed off. And when you move forward, it's, again, pretty much the same options. It comes up, and now we're doing an exit for the master assessment. We're going to hit save. And it comes up, and it's going to show all the data, all the assessments that need to be collected at exit. And we're going to go ahead and say, yes, he still has Medicaid. But I'm going to say, no, he doesn't have the other insurance. This is a way to kind of do a comparison, to collect the old data versus the new data. We do have a couple options. We have these view last screens. So if you want to see what data you collected or that specific client's last set of assessment data, it actually can kind of show it, see what they answered in the past. Might be able to help with data collection here to give you an idea of where they are. So I'm going to say he is now receiving services, and we do have documentation for it now. And other ones, Healthberries is one of those ones that doesn't allow you to directly copy data in, but the other data assessments do with this default last assessment. So if you kind of take a look and go, hey, this is the, okay, his entry, he had 2 yeses and we had $400. He goes, yeah, that's exactly what he has now. You can always collect default last assessment for the assessments that allow it and have that ability. It will actually copy in the last assessment that was collected. Can help with data collection, but only do that if it's the same, of course. Let me go ahead and click these. Now, once you go through all the assessments, you're pretty much done. And the system will actually, again, it's smart enough to know other household members that may be in the enrollment. It prompts you of, do you want to exit Paul from the enrollment? If you select yes, it will take you on the exit for that client. If you select no, it basically will prompt you until for each household member that's not exited. Once you circle through them all or exit them all, it will finish the workflow and you will be finished. And you'll be back on the client dashboard. So as you can see now, once the client is exited, a few more options open up on the client management area. And you can also see they do now have an exit date, in for this person, meaning they're not actively in the program after November 2nd. We also have review exit assessments, same exact option, except it takes us to the screen that we can view those that we collected. And then there's also a lot like edit enrollment, there is edit exit. So if we click edit exit, it'll allow you to edit the exit date, destination, and the reason for leaving. So if you have any problems with those data elements, you can use that option to go ahead and fix that data. Okay, I don't know if anybody has any questions. We've kind of gone through the program enrollment management and the program exit. So we got a couple of sections. I know we've covered a lot of assessments. I just want to cover another way to get there, and also a way to look at the master assessments within the system, and then we can kind of end up with project services.
Yeah, there's
I don't
just
know if
one
there's
question,
any.
Ryan. There's just one question, and it's just a clarification question. It's our post-enrollment contacts still put in using the services section?
Yes, they are.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and we'll cover that. Those are kind of like very specialty path rules. I'm trying not to confuse any outreach people that are here. But yeah, absolutely. Post-enrollment contacts go into services for PATH.
That's all the questions we have.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll keep going with the assessments. As we saw here, you can get to the review entry and review exit assessments, but we also have it within the menu itself. If you hover over enrollments, this is where we have, and this is also where the services are. You know, we've got the enrolled services, and then we have the PATH referral services, but we've got assessments here. So if we click on that, it's kind of another way. When it loads this screen, it's going to show you all of the, I guess, master assessments that have been collected for that client. And that's basically, you know, related to program events. You know, an entry collects an assessment record, exit, as well as if you collect any annual assessments, they will also be in this area as well. And then if you click on the action menu for them, you've got the assessment summary or you've got the edit master assessment. Now, edit master assessment is almost like that, it's exactly that screen that comes up during the enrollment or exit, and it basically allows you to change the date. So if you accidentally put in the wrong date during that process, you can come in here and change that at that time. The assessment summary basically loads, and we're going to actually look at the exit this time since we looked at entry last time. If we click on assessment summary, same exact screen that you load, you know, when using the action button, you know, from the dashboard, which is that review entry or review the exit assessments. Loads the exact same screen, exact same functionality. So it's kind of two ways to get to it. And it also allows you to view any during or annual assessment that might have been collected. And you get into it using the exact same manner of clicking on the assessment summary. I guess we'll go into services now. All services pretty much collected in the system, except for these contacts here, are under enrolled services. And this is where we've set up, like, every program has its own set of specific services it can provide, and it's pretty much ruled by the funding, and we do all that at setup when we create your new program and your grant and everything like that. So based on those kind of defaults, you have the ability, once a client is enrolled into your program, to add services provided to them. Some programs, more than others, require the entry of services, like PATH requires every service to be entered. Other programs like ESG, it's more of an optional endeavor. But if you click on this area here for enrolled services, it will actually show all the services that that client has been provided in the system. As you can see, there's no records here because we haven't entered any. There's two ways to enter services. You can hit Add New Service or Add Household Services. Basically, they're pretty much the same. The household services allows you to basically like replicate a service to multiple clients. So we're going to start here. And once you enter in a date, all service dates must fall within the enrollment. So as this enrollment was 9/25 to 11/02, if I put in 11/05, I don't have any enrollments there. So I know that gets some people when entering data. So just check your date if the enrollment doesn't pop up for you. But once you enter in the service date of when you provided the service, select what program enrollment that it's associated to. And as soon as you select the enrollment, it's basically going to give you your list of services. Again, they're going to be mostly predefined based on, COC funding, ESG funding within the system. I'm going to give this guy case management, and that's pretty much all that is required, the date, the enrollment, and the service. Then when you hit save, the system will create it, and as you can see, it will be listed here. Just quickly at the household services, it's pretty much the same thing, except it gives a grid for you to select what client you want to give the services to within the household. So that case management I just gave to Bobby, but let's say we're doing a transportation service that we provided, and I'm going to give it to both Bobby and Paul. So all the people that you select down here, which is all the people enrolled in the program, will get whatever service that you selected up there. So then if you hit save, it will be recorded and basically replicated out. So as you can see, it's here for Bobby, and if we went over to the other client, he would be there as well. I'm actually going to switch over to the PATH client because I want to show some of the PATH services. That's right, Luke Wilson. I couldn't remember the name. Okay. So if we go enrolled services, and then we hit add new service, pretty much the same process as we talked before. The service list will be a bit different, and they're all pretty much defaulted for each PATH program. The one difference is the contacts. Basically, for all programs in the system, once the client's enrolled, any non-contact service, goes straight into these enrolled services. For street outreach, you enter all contacts into the pre-enrollment contacts. PATH has this little wrinkle where for any contact that occurred during the program enrollment, which we kind of called post-enrollment contacts, we actually have the ability to enter them in directly as a service on this screen. So you can come in and enter it directly, for any enrolled contact. The other thing that I want to mention is to make it a little bit easier is if you are providing the client, a PATH client with a regular service like case management or client assessment, any of the others, the system also gives you the ability to contact a post-enrollment with it. So it's basically I'm going to create whatever service plus I'm going to add a contact to it. And that, again, that's just for the PATH people. I wanted to make sure I covered that is the same as it's been in the current system. And then as you can see here, when we go back in, we've got both the case management and the post-enrollment contact. Now, for PATH, we also have enrolled PATH referral services. This is strictly only PATH programs as well. They have the ability to record referral services that they have referred for their clients into this, throughout the community. And it works a lot like the services. It's got a default list for all the referrals they can provide. The one difference is each referral does require a status, which you can set to unknown if you record it and you don't know the result of the status. But as soon as you know whether the client actually received the service or did not receive the service as a result of the referral, that's when you should come back and enter in what the status was, whether it was attained or not attained. And that is the PATH referral services. Let's see here. Some resources, training materials. I think that pretty much covers it. I think the only thing I want to talk about, is make sure everybody realizes in the system, under the Home tab within the HMIS account, we do have system documents. We try to keep this as fairly up to date, with any documentation and that goes out. We're also going to be updating. These trainings are being recorded, so we're going to update our online library class right here that we have. They'll allow you to view this at any time once it's released. And we hope to get all that out by the end of the day, the PATH documentation, the outreach PATH workgroup documentation, as well as we hope to get out links to both yesterday's and today's trainings for everybody, because I know tomorrow's a holiday for a lot of people, the Veterans Day. We are doing the conversion late tomorrow evening to not interfere with anything, and we will be ready for the conversion to version 15 early Monday morning. I think that's it. If anybody has any questions or anything, we'll be sticking around to answer any questions anybody has or show anybody things in the system that that we might have missed. Thanks. Okay, everybody. I don't think there's any more questions coming in, so I think we are going to say goodbye and appreciate everybody for attending. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.